So in today's lesson, we're going to be cutting and pruning a lot of plants here on the Southern California property. Fruit trees, we're also going to be discussing roses and just other stuff that we come across that can benefit from getting cut up. And we're going to do it the proper way, and I'm going to share a lot of helpful tips as to when to do it, how to do it, and how to make sure your plants are going to have the happiest and healthiest life on your property for many more years to come. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and author of Saving the World with the Home Garden. And today we're going to be pruning a lot of different plants here on the Southern California property. Specifically, we're here in Los Angeles, and we're going to be starting off with pruning this elephant heart variety plum tree. These same principles apply to your plums, your peaches, your apricots. All of your stone fruit variety trees can be treated in a similar way. The number one question I get from growers around the world is, when do I cut my trees? The short answer is all year long. If you see a branch that's growing in the wrong way, or there's a branch that happened to be broken, or if there's a dead branch within the tree, all of those must be pruned. But there is a right time of the year for doing the massive pruning to your trees, cutting that growth that's more than 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, and even older wood that's within your tree structure. You can prune at this one specific time of year for the optimal health of the plant. And that is when you prune around that last chance of frost date. For us here in Los Angeles, last chance of frost, even though it rarely happens, is that last week of January. And the trees here know that in that last week of January, usually within about a week or two, all the plants wake up. They start growing, they start flowering, they start going back into fruit production. And that's why it's critical that you get the timing right compared to those that have already pruned their plants in October, November, and December, thinking, oh, it's the dormant season, leaves are falling off, or while the leaves are falling off, and they're starting to prune their plants. By doing so, imagine that surgeon that goes in the operating room saying, we can do your surgery now, but healing won't begin for 3 months. Or we can do the pruning now, close to the last chance of frost date, and the trees will begin recovering and healing within a matter of weeks. I choose, let's prune at the right time, and the plants will recover in a shorter period of time. And again, you're optimizing the health and the longevity of those plants that I know you and I care a lot about. So before you start pruning, it's important that you sanitize your tools. Before you start and in between each of the plants that you end up pruning, there's a lot of diseases that plants have similar to people. You wouldn't operate, again, as we're using this surgery analogy, I guess, throughout the video, that you wouldn't use the same scalpel and the same tools on one patient and then go to the next. It's important that you sanitize your tools because plants, like people, have diseases. For apples, particularly, fire blight is an easy disease to spread between apple trees. Why would you use that same tool, maybe not knowing that it had fire blight, and now spread it among all your apples and even pear trees that can pick up on the disease? Similarly, roses have fungal diseases. At the end of the day, you're controlling viral, bacterial, and fungal diseases from spreading throughout your entire garden. And these are just a few easy ways that you can actually sterilize your tools. My personal favorite is simply taking Lysol, and you can simply spray your tools like so between each of the trees. Fast and as simple and easy as that. Another way, take your Lysol wipes and wipe your tools down. Last but not least, you can just take a paper towel, get some cheap rubbing alcohol, and you can sterilize your equipment that way as well. Couldn't be easier, right? As they say in the medical profession, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So this plum tree, as you notice, here we are in the month of January, still has its leaves on. It's a young tree. It came from the nursery less than a year ago, and still hasn't acclimated to the weather conditions here. But I'm sure after this year, it's going to drop its leaves at the right time going forward. But something that we're looking at, we're going to see a few other trees that have shed their leaves so we can better see the skeleton of the tree compared to right now. It's crowded with its foliage. What we're going to do is basically open the central part of the structure. The goal is you want to maximize light penetration and airflow. And what that'll do is it'll maximize, obviously, photosynthesis within the plant, growth, And for the fruit that it's going to set, and this tree is mature enough that it can start supporting some fruit, it'll actually result in bigger fruit, tastier fruit, and so forth, compared to if it's a compact, crowded structure. What we're looking at is we're going right down the middle, looking for any crisscrossing of branches. So if you come in here, you can see, for example, this branch is growing towards the center, and here's another branch that's growing towards the middle. And we can simply take these out like so. And we're simply pruning that out. And this one over here that's coming towards the middle. And you can see we've already opened the structure. Here's another branch as well that's growing towards another branch. We can cut that one back at about 50%. And you can see we're starting to open the structure. Here's a couple more branches that are crowding one another. I'm going to pull this one back down to here and hopefully encourage more growth to come out this way. And this branch over here, there's some dead branch, which will be a nice invitation for beetles and termites. We want to cut that out so we can start healing where those wounds are. And again, more crisscrossing. We just prune that back. You can pull this one back as well. And you can see we're continuously just opening and opening the structure. The last thing I'm going to do now is simply bring the height down to match the rest of the structure. As you can see, there's only about 1, 2, 3 branches that are poking out above the rest of these other branches that are about a foot shorter than these. So we're simply going to make them all about equal, like so. And now we've got a beautiful structure. And you can see that the owner here has already whitewashed the structure, also using the Ivy Organic 3-in-1 plant guard. This is going to be critically important, both in the summer months as well as the winter months. While the canopy is still small, there's a lot of light penetration hitting this young tree trunk. And if you come a little further down, most of your deciduous fruit trees have been grafted, as has been done here. This here is the rootstock. This is the scion that controls the flavor of the tree. You can see we have protected the grafting wound with the Ivy Organic 3-in-1 plant guard from the rootstock and then all the way up to the lower branches of the tree. And this will offer the tree protection, keeping it cooler in the summer months, warmer in the winter months, and also protect any of the pruned areas. And this is going to protect the structure in a much healthier way than if you're using a latex or tar-based product that's going to trap moisture and result in underlying rot. And the Ivy Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard is OMRI certified for commercial organic orchards as well as your backyard organic practices. So this here to my left is another plum variety known as the Satsuma, and it's a common practice even for self-fruitful varieties of plums to integrate different varieties of plums on your property to facilitate cross-pollination. It's a known fact that cross-pollination will result in higher yields, even larger and more delicious tasting fruit by practice of cross-pollination. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bring this tree back down to size, and we're going to open the central part of the tree. So if you want to come in here, you can see, again, there's a lot of branching coming out of this area, this little V. I'm going to open it up like so. And you can see we've now opened the whole central part of the tree. This here has some dieback in this area. We're going to prune it back to where I see some good life, which is right here. And then we're now looking at this lower part of the tree. There's some overlapping, or basically these two branches are competing for about the same area of real estate for supporting future fruit. We're going to select between these two to keep the higher one. We're taking out this lower branch out, and then I'm going to cut this one back by about 50%. And here again, we're going to cut it back by about 50%. I'm actually going to keep this one. I'm actually going to keep this one a little longer. I'm now looking at the overall height. So what we're going to do now is just to look at the overall size of the tree and make sure that it's more balanced. So I'm simply going to be pruning it back here and here and here. Kind of like just giving it a haircut. You just want to make sure it's kind of even, looks appealing. You're pretty much the artist. This branch here is starting to grow into the pathway that's leading into the garden. So we're going to pull this one back a little bit as well to keep the growth off the path. And we can even prune this tip out as well to encourage a little bit more branching over here as well. And that's it. we've now got a well open, well ventilated tree that's going to perform very well going into the spring and summer months. So to my right over here is another stone fruit known as the Goldmine Nectarine. And I just want to highlight a few things. Again, when it comes to pruning, if there's dead branches within the structure, you're allowed to prune those at any time of the year. Come and check this out over here. You'll notice, even though this whole tree looks dormant and everything looks dead right now, as you can see over here, this particular branch is definitely dried out. And even if there was some life in it, and you can actually test it out if you're going to do the scratch test, which I wouldn't waste my time on. If you see that the branch is dried out and looks pretty weak, and it's also in a bad location also, just take it out like so. And the other thing in regards to the scratch test, you saw the scratching and there was no color, but if I do a scratch test anywhere else on the tree, you can see that there should be some green behind the bark. And that's basically you're accessing the cambium layers, which is facilitating the movement of the waters and sugars up and down the tree. And as we did with the other trees in the garden, we're looking for any crossing of the branching and basically trying to open the structure. I always say like a base-shaped structure. And again, I'm looking at over here, there's some branches that are running parallel and alongside other established branches that I truly want to keep compared to this last year's growth that happened. And we're simply going to cut it out like so. And we're going to continuously look for any crossing of the branching. Like over here, we see that there's two branches going the same direction. We can keep this one or that one or cut both by about 50%. And what we're doing is we're cutting back. I want you to capture this better from your side. What I'm doing is basically following up to the nearest node. I can prune about a 1/4 inch above here, or I can go up a little higher and go up to the next bud. We'll pick the bud, and we're cutting about a 1/4 inch at an angle like so. The reason for the angle is that when moisture comes to hit it, you want to make sure that the water doesn't collect and sit at the top and instead falls off the side of the branch. The other thing too I'm looking at, as we did with all the other trees, we're looking at the height. Something to be mindful of when it comes to stone fruit trees is that all of these buds that you see, and come a little closer and examine all of this budding happening. And most people usually confuse these buds with resulting in leaf development. And that's not the case. All of these buds are going to be the flowers and ultimately the fruit. So all of the buds that you see throughout this entire structure is what's going to support the fruit on the tree. If you can reach the bud, which I barely can reach some of the higher ones, then that means I can barely reach the fruit come summer. Even if this tree grows 10 to 15 feet taller, all the fruit are going to be right where we pruned at the end of the year. As again, this is the flowering wood that will result in the fruits. All I'm going to do, and following the backyard orchard culture concept, I want to make sure that my tree remains compact, easy accessible, and easy to harvest throughout the year. So what I'm going to do is just make sure that all of the buds are within reach, and we're going to simply shorten the tree like so. That's going to be the maximum height for all of this structure. And that means all my fruit are going to be that easy to pick come summer. Even if this tree grows to 20 and 25 feet tall, all my fruit are going to be within reach. So we talked about dead branches, and we saw that there were some branches that were dried out. This particular branch probably broke under the weight of the fruit last year. And you can see over here, there's some splitting going on, but this wood is very much alive. It's trying its best to stay alive, as you can see, witnessed by this green layer beneath the bark. And again, what's the point of keeping a broken structure? This is your time to repair and lighten the amount of wood so that it can better support next year's harvest. When it comes to your stone fruit trees, you can prune them back by anywhere from 30 to upwards of 60 and even 70% for some of your stone fruits, such as apricot. But keep in mind, that only refers to the growth of last year's wood. So if this was last year's wood, you can see that grew about 1.5 feet long. I can cut this wood back by about 70% with minimal stress to the tree. But as you saw, we cut some branches that were 2 and even 3 years old, and that actually is going to be taking a lot of the wood mass away from the plant. And if you cut it back significantly, you risk the plant going into what's known as vegetative growth year. And that means the plant's only going to want to grow and offer you zero fruit that year. So bear that in mind when tackling these projects on your property, that if you cut too much, you do risk a year of fruit. The last thing that I'm doing as I'm going around this tree is I'm making sure that the branches are going to be strong enough come spring and ultimately summer, when it's carrying the full size weight of the fruit, that it's going to be strong enough to support carrying 3 to 5 fruit on a branch. So some of these skinnier branches, like here, I've been pulling them in by at least a third, at least a half, because again, if it's carrying too much weight and on this very young, thin branch, it's going to break the structure of the tree. And we've demonstrated that several times over the years. This is going to actually, even though it looks trivial, what I'm doing is I'm actually removing the fruit by simply pruning these branches that are all full of flowers and ultimately fruit. So this is, in a way, thinning the fruit in advance of what's anticipated this upcoming spring. And bringing it in, strengthening the structures. Here's another very long branch that's going diagonal. We're going to pull it in by 70%. And when these go to bloom, and this is again where all the fruit's going to be, it's going to be on a stronger woody structure that'll better support that mass than had we not taken that additional wood off the tree. Let me demonstrate some roses as well. Follow me to the rose garden. So again, the vase-shaped structure, again, opening the branches so that the center of the plant is open is going to be the first step, in addition to looking for any dead branches around. And this is the first one that catches my eye, is right over here. There's a cane of this particular rose that is dead, obviously witnessed by these dead leaves, but even if it had no leaves on it, this is looking a lot weaker than the rest of the rose structure. So we're going to take it down to the ground, like so. So the next thing is, I'm seeing that these two branches here are competing for the same light. And so we've got to select between this 2 to 3 year wood branch, if you take a look, is a little bit older than this younger new branch that's coming out. We're going to take out the older branch, and we're going to encourage this new younger branch to take over. I'm now following the nodes up, one, and I'm following the nodes basically right where the leaves are attached is where the new branching is going to occur. So here's one node, the next node is over here at this leaf, and the next node is over there. I'm going to bring it down to the lower node, and I'm looking at the direction of the node. This node is pointed outwards. That's what we want. Had I pruned at this leaf, that's going to encourage the growth to come right back into the center of the vase shape structure. That's not what we want. We want it to go away. So we're pruning like so. One other observation, you know that I'm always trying to prune at an angle, but notice that the angle also has a little bit more wood above the base of the node compared to the backside. So when you do your angle always results in more wood at the bud you're trying to protect than the backside. And now, again, applying that same principle, we're going to do it throughout. I'm looking for competing branches wherever there's crisscrossing and removing it. You'll notice also, this here is last year's wood. As we go a little lower, that's like 2 years wood. As we're going lower, we're now in year 3. Again, being this is January, our last chance of frost date is a few weeks away, and we're trying to prune at a time that the plant can quickly heal and quickly grow and recover from the pruning that we're doing. But again, this is when the plant is in the most dormant state of the entire year. And that's the reason why this is the best time to do your massive pruning and basically bring your roses back in check. And the pruning can continuously occur on all of that new growth that happens during the course of this year. If it's growing in the wrong direction towards the path, or if there's some roses and it's finished its cycle of blooms, is another good time to prune as well to encourage further blooms throughout the year. And we'll continuously bring it down. I'm actually going to bring this entire branch down to to this point right here. Again, these two branches pretty parallel to one another. I'm trying to decide between the two. Obviously, this one is bigger and more established. I'll keep this time. I'm taking the younger one from behind it out and bringing this one down to this point. And here we go. As you can see, we've completely opened the structure of the plant. These two are also running parallel to one another. I'm just going to take it out at the base, and there it goes. And then that's it. Take a look at this structure rose that we've now got primed and ready for an excellent 12 more months on this property, compared to some of these roses that were pruned earlier, not by me, but you can see the big difference with how this was done compared to what I did. And I'm just going to correct a little bit more here in front of me so you can see the difference. Again, this is all last year's wood. And then maybe even the year before, or it was just like the earlier part of the season last year. I'm going to bring it down to this point and this point and this point, and I'm looking for crisscrossing. Again, these are two competing branches. This one will come out, and you can already see how the results are completely different than the rest of the structure in front. I'm going to continue the effort throughout, but this is going to result in a much stronger rose bush that's going to generate more larger, profuse, healthier, stronger, just a better life throughout the year if you follow these tips in your garden as well. There's just one more thing I want to share with you. Follow me. So the owner of this fig tree did something very creative, and it overlaps on another topic we discussed earlier today, which is talking about the mass and the volume of the wood of the tree. If you cut too much off of it, and we're not talking about like for a young tree, if it's a young tree that's 6 feet and you bring it down to 4 or even 3, is not as traumatic as taking out about, 30, 40, 50% of the wood of the tree. The goal is, and again, it's not an exact science, but if you take back too much of the wood, the carbon of the tree, it'll actually trigger the plant to go into vegetative state, which means you will not enjoy fruit that year. So just bear that in mind when tackling pruning on your property. But figs in particular love to be pruned hard. And that means, again, for all of that growth that happened last year, in this example over here, it's just this like foot that it grew last year. You can prune it back by as much as 60 and 70%. But you can't prune this entire wooden structure by 60 and 70% and still expect fruit that year. So what the owner did here to still capitalize on getting a large tree that has fruit that is within reach, that what the owner did is basically arch the tree over into a canopy, and most of the fruit remains within reach because they've bent the structure over. So now it can still be a large tree measuring 15 plus feet, but it has fruit that is mostly within reach and or with a step ladder can be accessible. What we're going to do here real quick, so again, is considering, and a lot of growers will sometimes bend their trees in a way to make sure that those branches are low lying, especially a lot of varieties of plants that like to grow very tight and vertical. You can apply applications such as this of bending branches in order to create massive amounts of wood with fruit that are still within reach. So consider this concept. We're going to come through, and I notice that there's, again, some branches that need correcting throughout. This one over here in particular has a kink. I'm hoping you can see right there in the branch, and that weakness will be removed like so. So this here is another angle of the tree, and this here is a branch that's pointed down. And just to show you, like, look at how far away I am from where the tree trunk is. We're at least 15 to 20 feet away, and here are some more branches, but this is coming towards our retaining wall. And again, any fruits that's happening here are going to be accessible to basically, I don't want to say just ants, but in addition to raccoons, possums, and so forth. But we can actually keep this branch still low lying and just prune this off the ground that's right here to the right. And that's going to result in a much healthier tree and give us fruit that are going to be right there within reach come summer. And here's another branch from the fig tree that's going straight downhill. we can reduce the load and the weight on this branch so that it has a stronger, healthier going into spring and summer. I'm just basically going to lighten it like so. And again, we're going to have a lot of fruit all within reach. Oh, and don't forget about the cuttings. This is also an excellent time. Again, as our last chance to frost date is approaching, this is an excellent time for harvesting your scions and propagating your fig trees as well. And for those of you that are not aware, the annual Ivy Organic Free Fig Cutting Giveaway starts on February 1st. And this is an excellent time to be collecting some of the best varieties. We usually collect close to 100 varieties of fig cuttings throughout the month of February and make it part of our annual giveaway. Details will be published on February 1st. So take a look at the size of the tree again. As you can see above my head, there's a lot of wood that's going like another 15 to 20 feet vertical. And I was asked, like, what more would you cut? And I'm like, there's a lot more that I would still cut. And starting with all of that vertical wood, the owner of this tree, again, I love the concept and the idea with these bent branches that are going horizontal. And so I would keep this structure and this structure that's going underneath this pathway, and it's pretty dramatic, and I can't wait to show this off come spring and summer with how beautiful this is going to look. I've seen it with leaves, but the thing I would make sure of is that all of the height, those branches that are going completely vertical, about a year, 2, 3, 4 years from now, will eventually create so much damaging shade to the understory of the tree that some of these branches will start dying back to basically put all of its resources towards more of the vertical and more natural growth. So if you want to preserve this art within your property, it's important that you remove the vertical growth to encourage more low-lying branches. And ultimately, the goal as well is to enjoy low-lying fruit as well. Figs in particular have a very soft pith that usually right after pruning collapses and becomes a perfect entryway for beetles and termites. If you take a look at this point over here, you can see that there's a hole in the structure. I've seen dozens of ants going in and out of it. You can see there's one here circling, but they've been going in and out of this hole as well as other holes that are pruned. This one over here is pretty much a dead piece of wood that needs to be pruned out as well. And I'm sure is another entryway for beetles and termites. And they're probably, we found ants all over the tree. They're probably making the inner part of the tree home. And they usually have a symbiotic relationships with termites. And you sometimes will see trees in the city that have fallen over and they're hollow. And it's typically due to pests in a similar situation where they enter from prune branched areas and end up shortening and weakening the life of the tree on your property. So we're going to be addressing that right now using the Ivy Organics all-purpose 3-in-1 plant product. Again, it offers protection against damaging summer sunburn and insects and rodents for use on your roses, fruit, nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs, for use in organic production and healthier than latex paint and tar-based products. And let's go and prepare this so I can show you how we're going to apply it. So for this application, I'm using color brown, same product. It's also available in colors green and gray and grayish. Gray and grayish might come a little bit closer as a match to the tree, so it doesn't necessarily have to be visible in order to offer protection, regardless of the color. Kind of like your shirt in the middle of summer, regardless of the color, it's going to offer protection from sunburn. Obviously, white reflects the most amount of light and heat. The cans come with a base powder and an oil vial. The base powder is basically limestone and clay and these milk proteins, including diatomaceous earth, which is another insect repellent protection. And so we've got the powder in there. So now we're going to apply the oil vial contents, which includes 7 natural oils. It includes castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. What I haven't done in a very long time is demonstrate how this product can be used as a paste. Most people use it as a brush-on solution, but what I'm going to do, since we're going to use it as a paste this time, so we simply added a lot less water, like about a half a can, maybe a third of a can of water. We're now going to mix this and we're going to create a paste solution. Just watch this. We're going to add a little bit more water. You can see it's pretty starting to cake up, but I want to get a pretty thick consistency this time. So here we go. So this tree paste consistency, you can simply just take a small amount like this and start patching all of these areas with the oils and that diatomaceous earth. And that's basically going to trap any pests that are within the plant that try to bore through it are going to get injured on their way out. Diatomaceous earth is basically like a crushed glass on the exoskeleton of those pests, and it's basically going to scratch them up, and they're going to shortly dry out and die. And nor will they attempt to enter this wound protection. And last but not least, and as it says here on the can, a lot healthier than putting a latex or tar-based product, because had I done so in this instance, I would be trapping moisture, which is now further contributing to rot. And that's exactly what we don't want to do. This product's going to dry on porous, and it's going to allow the exchange of moisture and nutrients, which is far healthier protection than using any other product. So now we're going to take the paste solution and we're going to make it a brush-on solution. So if you take a look here, again, you can see the consistency of the paste. Less water, simply add more water. You can actually fill it up to the top of the can. Once you actually use a little bit of it, you can even add some more water to it and keep on using it. So this here is going to now create the brush-on solution that'll help protect a lot of trees now here on the property. The consistency, you can tell, once you have a full can of paint, it's kind of like a 50% latex paint solution. That's what the consistency is supposed to be like. And again, you can dilute it even further than this, as I said, as you continue the project. The goal is just to get it on the bark. It'll offer your trees about a year of protection. So here we are, and you can see we're now protecting the bark. In the winter, from winter sun scald, we do have some really cold nights expected up ahead. And this is color brown, and you can see how that's turning out. Other options, maybe a little closer for this fig tree, maybe gray, maybe grayish would be a little closer if the goal is to match. And obviously, as I said earlier, color white is going to naturally reflect the most amount of light and heat. But again, all colors will offer protection. The other thing I want to do, I'll continue basically protecting all of the side of the branch that's getting the exposure to light. But I found that there's a tree down here that's been grafted, and we want to protect the grafting wound as well. Check this out. So this here is another fig on the property. You can see it's been grafted and has healed over beautifully. The scion is over here, and it's healed beautifully, seamlessly into the rootstock. Here again, rootstock, scion. But there's still areas of exposure. If you can see, there's a lot of wood that still has yet to heal. And these are potential entryways for, again, beetles, termites, disease, whether it be viral, bacterial, and so forth. Be a good idea to protect that in addition to all of these wounds that have been diverted to support the grafted wood. So we're taking the brush-on solution and filling in the gaps on the grafting wound all the way around to ensure that no pests attempt to penetrate this area. Again, it dries on porously, allowing sufficient exchange between the water and nutrients so it doesn't suffocate beneath those protected areas. And then now we're protecting the wounds. And even though right now it's shady, we're going to continue protecting, since there's only one branch that's going straight up. There's no canopy protecting the lower story of the tree. So we're going to start brushing all the way down the tree trunk to protect it again from, in the winter, winter sun scald, in the summer, summer sunburn. So we're going to protect that entire trunk to prevent any risk of first, second, or third degree sunburn damage. And again, you'll notice I'm only protecting the tree trunk and the lower branches. I'm not protecting every branch and every tip of branch within the tree structure. The reason, obviously, it's not practical. The second one is, again, as long as the heart of the tree is protected, being, again, tree trunk and lower branches, this tree is going to be on my property for a very long period of time. If the tree trunk or the lower branches suffer first, second, third degree burns, that's probably going to be its last year or last few years on the property as pests now invade the tree. So we're about ready to paint the pruned rose, but I just noticed over here evidence of third-degree summer sunburn damage right there. Take a look. Complete exposure to the light, even though it's minimal now because it's January. Sun comes in intensely and damages the bark and that cambium tissue. This whole side of the rose is dead. The underside, the shady side, is still alive and providing some energy to these upper branches, and that's why it's still green. But you can see the stress of summer sunburn on this plant is causing it to perform less than par. So again, this is where whitewashing could definitely help improve the longevity of, in this example, your roses. And let's just quickly just finish what we started over here. And I want to again point out, roses also suffer a lot of fungal and bacterial diseases as well. And if you take such as rose blight, hopefully you can, I'm just hoping you can capture the fact that when you take a look at these canes, these were pruned about a year or two ago. You can see they've been hollowed out. This would be an excellent application time now. If I had the paste, it would fill in a little bit better. But we're probably going to brush over this area twice to make sure that it's full of a product and keeping pests out. And then we're going to simply brush the entire rose structure like so. Again, preventing sunburn damage and winter sun scald damage to these roses. The sun is hitting that green tender bark all day long already. Again, this is a perfect prime example for whitewashing. And you can see, again, color brown. Again, it could be green, could be white. We're now offering that trunk some protection. There's 2 stems here. The owner just told me that they're going to end up grafting it in the upcoming year. But in the interim, just to make sure that these trees remain healthy, we're going to protect the bark and make sure that they remain healthy until they're ready to be grafted, as this is a seedling avocado. So if you've enjoyed this educational lesson brought to you by IV Organic, be sure to give us that thumbs up, share us with your gardening friends and family. Most importantly, keep growing with IV Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.